Hi everyone, it's Rob Ryder. Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2020. And as a change of pace, today I'm going to do a public service video on kerosene your lungs and Keister, turpentine your tummy. Because as we'll see, you don't really want to treat anything in this case, you want to dissolve it. We're going to dissolve the cause and the effect. And, what I'm going to show you is all based on history. So, again, Rob Ryder isn't saying it. I read it in a book. But a lot of us can be about this book here, Consumption of the Lungs and Kindred Diseases, Treated and Cured by Kerosene. You might want to write that down and Google it. You can find it online. It was, who wrote it here? C.O. Fry. And it was copyrighted in 1914. But I wanted to show something first. So let's look at a virus, right? One of the questions is, well, is the virus the cause or the effect? Because viruses can be easily carried inside bacteria. And, right, so it could be you have a bacteria infection that has viruses, and they're looking at the viruses, which are really the effect, not the cause, and what they should be looking at is the bacteria. Because Webster's, he said that a virus is a foul or contagious matter of an ulcer, pustule, etc., a poison. All right, so I'm not saying the virus won't kill you. I'm just saying the virus was probably caused by a bacteria. And so you can't cure the bacteria by, trying to fight the virus necessarily. But if you were to read this thing here on Wikipedia, it says a virus is a submicroscopic infectious agent that replicates only inside a living cells or an organism. Well, I'd say, it's doing that inside the bacteria. Viruses can infect all types of life forms, animals, plants, microorganisms, including bacteria and archaea, whatever that is, but bacteria. You get the idea. Well, a little bit farther down, it talks about, while not inside of an infected cell or in the process of infecting a cell, viruses exist in the form of independent particles or virions consisting of a genetic material, protein coat called a capsid, and in some cases an outside envelope of lipids. And it's these lipids that are of interest because it says in biology and biochemistry, a lipid is a biomolecule that is soluble in nonpolar solvents. Oh my God, what the hell is that? Well, nonpolar solvent are typically hydrocarbons used to dissolve other naturally occurring hydrocarbon lipid molecules that do not dissolve in water, including fatty acids, waxes, sterols, fat-soluble vitamins, so forth and so on. Anyways, that's what the kerosene does, and the turpentines, it strips the frickin' lipids or any fatty acid, wax, or so forth that these microorganisms are using to protect them in your body because, these are things that are not soluble by water. Otherwise, your body could flush them out. And so adding just a bit of hydrocarbon to your diet is a really smart thing to do. And again, I didn't say it. These guys did. So kerosene, as a protection against tuberculosis. 1 million sufferers to cure and 75 million to protect. Which is interesting. I mean, this guy says we had lots of people dying back in the 1915 era from tuberculosis. A cure for a penny. You will surely believe it if you ever try it. Earnestly yours, C.O. Fry. I believe he believed it, and I second his opinion because I've tried it, and well, I believe it's worked for me. Introduction: the preparation of this booklet, commending kerosene ordinary lamp oil as safe, positive remedy for diseases of the lungs and other respiratory organs, is a conclusion reached only after deliberative and careful study as to the value which may be given in return for the selling price. So I'm not talking the kerosene that comes from the gas station. I'm talking the lamp oil you buy in the store to put in your oil lamps. That's what this is. It doesn't really have any smell, doesn't have any taste. Doesn't. And, he had tried before to tell people about this, and he finally decided to write it up in a book. My honest belief is that a penny's worth of kerosene, properly administered, will cure 80% of those taking the treatment for consumption of the lungs, and that the remaining 20% will receive a measure of relief, which will establish integrity and honesty of the author. He's not trying to take your money, he's trying to save your life. We have no sympathy or patience with the tendency of the medical profession to mystify the public by the use of Latin phrases in naming diseases and remedies. On the contrary, we desire to speak plainly and have it distinctly understood that there is no secret formula being offered at robbers' prices, and that we are standing with the confidence, the proven merits of common kerosene. The chief distribution noted the system of treatment, aside from the cheapness and simplicity of the remedy itself, is the method of administering, which is basically to inhale it, or to drink it, or to take it up the keister. Depends on what your problem is. The bronchial tubes and lungs are treated by the direct application of a spray to the affected parts. One would hardly bind a poultice to the jaw to relieve a boil on the arm. Well, there you go, right? Put the medicine where the problem is. This homily illustrates it's not intended to amuse, but to impress an important truth on the mind of the reader. Each and every organ and member of the body has an important part to perform, and if one or more of those become diseased or disabled, our effort to restore them to health and activity should not involve or disturb the healthy ones. The pernicious method of practice of punishing the stomach and bowels with strong medicines, which are intended to reflect an indirect influence on the lungs, is not justified by the results obtained in this class of diseases. Right? Why take a medicine in the stomach for your lungs? The primary function of the human stomach is to receive and set up process of digestion of food, drink, distribute, da-da-da. And we all have gut problems, there's no doubt about it. So, throwing in medicine that isn't meant for the gut probably isn't the wisest thing to do. But hey, you take care of those problems with turpentine or with kerosene. Actually, both turpentine, which is nothing more than sap from a tree, right? It's just been distilled. You take the sap, you distill it, you capture the vapor, you condense it, and in that vapor condensed is water and what we call turpentine. But it's just the essential oil of a pine tree. That's what I'm talking about. Well, that's it's a hydrocarbon, and 6-chained hydrocarbon, I think, and that's what this lamp oil is. 6-chained hydrocarbon. And I don't know if I'm going to find it here as I'm reading, because I'm not going to read this whole thing, but actually it was John D. Rockefeller that introduced kerosene as a cure for this stuff, for cancer even, until he found out later that he could make more money by selling another thing as chemotherapy and just treating the cancer instead of curing the cancer. Because all these things can be eliminated if our systems were working better. So let's see let's get to some good stuff here. In fact, give me just a second, because I don't want to spend the whole time trying to read this book. But there are parts I do want to read, so hang on just a second. Okay, Chapter 1, A Cure for a Penny. Pulmonary tuberculosis and consumption of the lungs, the same disease. Brief description. The term pulmonary tuberculosis and consumption of lungs are synonyms in their meaning, both having reference to an ulcerated condition of the lungs. We prefer to use the latter, a more common name, as it is more clearly indicates to the general public the disease so common to the human race. So first of all, tuberculosis is apparently really common to the human race. And we'll go on in here, and that's what he's saying. It sounds like that, like prostate cancer is really tuberculosis in your prostate. It's a single-celled organism that rides around in your bloodstream. Um, so when we understand that the lungs, either one or both of them, are the seat of one or more open running ulcers, each of which eats and spreads, throwing off an offensive mucus called sputum, which I think is where the viruses are, and forming the breeding nest for the tuberculous germ, the tubercular germ, which propagates by inhabiting, absorbing and consuming the dead and decayed lung tissue. We readily choose the term consumption of lungs as clearly indicating the nature of the disease, which actually consumes the tissue of the lungs. So you got something eating in your lungs, making this sputum that has the breeding nest for the tubercular germ, which feeds on the dead and decaying lung tissue, which is dead and decaying because something else killed it first. It's almost like leafcutter worms or leafcutter ants, where they go out and they harvest leaves to feed some fungus that they eat on later, right? That maybe that's what the virus is to the germ. It's food, and so it feeds its nest by eating your lung tissue. Consumption of lungs is an infectious disease supposed to have origin in the tubercular bacillus discovered by Dr. Koch in the year 1882. This bacillus is a slender rod with rounded ends from 2 to 25 thousandths of an inch in length, encapsulated in a gelatin or other substance that will withstand 15% nitric acid, 33 and 1/3% alcoholic solution before dissolving this capsule, which is necessary to destroy the germ. How do you destroy the germ? Right? You dissolve its freaking capsule. Herein lies the difficulty with finding a remedy strong enough to kill the germ and not harmful for the sound tissue while being used to affect the cure. Well, that's why we're going to use turpentine or kerosene to dissolve the outer coating of the germ, be it a bacteria or a virus, and it will no longer be either of those. It'll just be, a mass of goo going out. But you're going to be able to cough out then. These germs are taken to the body by dried state through the respiratory tract, wounds and abrasions of the skin, also by the intestinal tract, on food, infected hands, coming in contact with the mouth. Yeah, we know how we all get it, so we don't need to talk about that. We then have a well-defined case of tuberculosis in the incipient stage that will develop into a wasting disease, which in most cases has baffled all medical and scientific skill until kerosene, common coal oil, was found to be an efficient remedy when intelligently applied to the germ and diseased tissue of the lungs. There are several different kinds of these germs. Human infecting human beings, bovine infecting cattle, avian infecting fowls. Yeah, I think that's what they say the flus are. You got, hang on just a second, please. For a long time, it was thought that such species of germs only infected that species of human or animal body, but later statistics show that they are communicable from one to another. Jeepers, we talking about the flu or what? Thus, humans may be infected with the bovine germ, etc. This is proven by children, and in some cases, adults contracting the disease through milk, aka the bovine germ. Yeah, okay, I had to make sure it was still on. During the last year, tuberculosis caused the death of 200,000 people in the United States. And there are more than 900,000 other living infected with the disease, helping to spread the infection. I'd say that's what we're dealing with today. Tuberculosis has being an infectious person should be very cautious in disposing of waste material from the body, such as spectrum stools, excrements given off, da 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 da. You get the idea. Right? So kerosene has a remedy. Its action to the tissue of the lungs and all disease parts through the blood. And this is the wonderful thing. When you inhale kerosene, it gets into your blood and it chases all the shit out of your bloodstream. And this, like the second time I did it, because when I use kerosene, I use it in a nebulizer, and I put, a teaspoon in a nebulizer, turn the thing on, take 2 or 3 puffs, and put it down, and that could last for, a week, 2 weeks. But when I had first done it, like the second time I had did it, I could tell something was really going on, and about an hour later, I had tremendous diarrhea, and but I felt, perfectly well afterwards. And all I had done was inhaled that kerosene, so it gets into your blood and it chases out all these other critters that are living in your blood or different parts of your body and so forth and so on. So I'm just paraphrasing what this book would tell you because I don't have time to read you the whole book, but that's my experience. So after experimenting with kerosene with no little extent, it has been found to be the only known agent with antiseptic power strong enough to kill this germ and not harmful to the body tissue in any way. Kerosene, after being taken in the lungs, is readily absorbed by the blood and carried to every part of the body. In this way, it comes into direct contact with the diseased parts wherever located. However, its most positive effect is on the tissues of the lung. Its peculiar virtue lies in the fact that it is perfectly harmless to healthy tissue and sets up its healing influence on the diseased tissue wherever found in the body. Noted cases of consumption cured. Among the more noted cases affected by the treatment are those of Mary Olson, now married, living with her, now married, giving her testimony under the name Mary Adkins. Her case was under the care of some doctor and blah, 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 blah. Now we'll go, all these different people that had it. Relief in all cases. Complete cure where the lung tissue has not been destroyed. Experience has demonstrated that relief is to be expected as soon as the treatment is fairly undertaken. And this has led many patients to become careless as to an intelligent use of the remedy, causing them to discontinue to lose too short a time to complete cure. And also on the lungs is stubborn, and we should feel We should feel grateful if we can completely overcome it by treatment covering 1 to 4 months. Our success in treating consumption of the lungs with this simple, harmless, and inexpensive remedy has been such as to justify the assertion that it will afford relief in all cases and effect a positive cure in every case where the treatment is used before the tissue of the lungs has been largely destroyed by the disease. Don't wait. Do it today. You could take this book into court if somebody's ever challenged you on this and say, well, this is a book of authority. It says I can do it. And the judge would agree with you because you brought in a public record that says here's a cure for tuberculosis. It's not been questioned. It's in the fucking public record. In 2 cases of tubercular prostate glands, the patient trying everything to get relief with no results and suffering for months were cured in a very short time by use of kerosene taken internally. 1/2 teaspoon doses morning and evening. And so that's just, is that inhaling it or is that, by the teaspoon? I'd say it's by the mouth. In pulmonary form of tuberculosis, consumption of lungs, and other diseases of the respiratory tract, we recommend the use of an atomizer, delivering a spray directly to the lungs through the throat. To administer a spray of kerosene in the lungs is a very simple, harmless operation not attended with danger, pain, or strangulation, even in delicate patients. There's nothing to it. Just put it in a nebulizer. Take a puff. Put it in a spray bottle. Take a puff. It don't even have any taste. Right? Get it into your lungs. You'll see they're only talking like 10 drops. Here we go. One spray will be found to deliver about 10 drops of the oil thoroughly mixed with air taken into the lungs. That's because he was using this particular gizmo. He actually talks about it. 1 or 2 sprays will be found sufficient for a treatment. So 1 or 2 sprays 2 times a day of kerosene will cure whatever it is that is causing this coronavirus, because they're saying it's a respiratory disease. Right? And if the shit that was in there was water soluble, it would already been gotten rid of. But it isn't water soluble. If it isn't water soluble, well, then it's hydrocarbon soluble, because that's just the way shit works. Either it's a fat dissolved by a kerosene, or it's something that's dissolved by water, not dissolved by kerosene. Well, we got the water part taken care of. What we don't have is what do you do about the fats? And that's all this is. It's just going to dissolve the carcass of the frickin' critter, and it'll flow right out of you. However, a careful study of matter leads me to give preference to the DeVilbiss atomizer number 28. If you look on eBay, you can find those for sale. Right? So you can actually use the thing he's talking about. Especially adapted to the administration of kerosene remedy into the bronchial tubes and lungs, and practical for all other uses. The efficiency and simplicity of the use of this particular atomizer has been much improved by the aid of an additional air jacket or tube especially provided for this purpose by the manufacturer under special direction, which tube can be removed at pleasure when it is desired to use the atomizer for other purposes. So they got an addition. They got an adapter to put on the atomizer to make it get the kerosene into your lungs better. Jeepers. We are positioned to supply. Okay, well, you're not going to buy it for $1 anymore. But back in the day, kerosene has a protection against development of the white plague. By abiding confidence in the merits of this common commodity, kerosene, found in or with the reach of every home, fertilize is the hope of its use as a preventive agency, whereby those who are exposed to infectious and associated with it and care for those infected, including also a vast number who are predisposed to this dreadful disease, may be safeguarded by its occasional use with an atomizer, and thereby discourage the development of pulmonary tuberculosis. Don't wait, do it today. This paragraph touches upon a great problem in prevention of tuberculosis. It is not second to, but equal importance to the cure. Right. Ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. While we have millions of sufferers, we have 75 million people in danger of infection. That sounds like, that just sounds like common sense. Enlarged internal glands, the vapor of hot kerosene in certain cases. In cases of enlarged glands of tubercular origin, catera of the stomach, etc., we recommend its use internally, 1/2 teaspoon morning and evening. In catera of the head, some forms of cold or fullness of the head, a spray thrown well back into the nostrils will give relief following a very few treatments. Inhalation of fumes of hot kerosene is another successful method of treating a cold in the head. For this method, using kerosene, heat a small, thick china dish or cup on a stove to medium-high temperature. Then, with a folded towel or napkin for protection, hold the cup in hand. Place 2 tablespoons of oil therein. Hold the vessel under the nose. Take a deep breath, breathing through the nose if the trouble is in the head. Using this treatment morning and evening for 5 to 10 minutes and interval periods, patient is in a condition of distress. Well, there's your remedy. Believe it or not, useful in many cases. Croup, a shear cure, cuts and wounds, used as a liniment. If an atomizer and a small supply of kerosene is in readiness for emergency, it will be found very useful not only lung trouble, but very many other cases. In cases of croup, should be treated by liberal spraying into the throat. This will dissolve the phlegm and give immediate relief. In desperate cases, give internally in half teaspoon doses besides using the spray liberally. In cut, bruise, wounds, like serious or on man or beast is sprayed with the oil. All poison or germs will be destroyed. All poison or germs will be destroyed. Did that say that all poisons or germs will be destroyed? Well, it sure did. And the injury will heal very quickly. That sounds just almost too good to be true. Development of leg gripe will be arrested by spraying the oil in the throat or nose. Don't know what that is. How about sore throat? Do the same thing. Cold in the head? Yeah, give it a couple sprays. Cold in lungs? Yeah. Give it a couple sprays. Neuralgia in the face and teeth, which is, I think that's nerve pain. All right, just take some up the nose. You feel better. No problem. Smoker's cough leads to consumption. Do you want relief? The irritation caused by excessive smoking, affecting the throat and lungs, especially cigarette smoking, is the result of nicotine poisoning, aggravated and intensified by the foolish and dangerous habit of inhaling the smoke. I used to have that dangerous habit. A spray of oil in the throat, also the lungs, will counteract the poison, and if fouled up, will effect a complete cure. So if you're going to smoke, use some kerosene. It's not quite like having a Camel. Yeah, lighten up a Camel. Those who choose the pleasure of a cigarette at the expense of their lungs and general health will be expected to ignore this warning and pay the penalty of slave to the habit, right? They just won't listen. They won't take the cure. Hey, look at this, good for snake bites, nail in the foot, poison from the vine or insects, inflamed eyes. You get the idea. It goes on and on and on. Said later he was going to actually try to inject it right into a tumor. But I can't find that there was ever a later edition. So if anybody finds one, please share. Send it to courtofrecord@aol.com. courtofrecord@aol.com. I'd like to read it. Okay. So that's that book. So that's the lungs. Well, how about the Keister? Well, as it turns out, if you were to search on kerosene enema on Google, you could get some hits. And it would say here that in severe cases of obstinate constipation with fecal impaction, I have injected a quart of common coal oil, that would be kerosene, the kind commonly used in lamps. Yeah, that stuff there. This has never failed to produce results. In one case, it took an hour and 7 minutes to get a quart of oil into the bowel, but it did the work. What's the problem then? It means you're full of shit, right? And your shit is, for whatever reason, water insoluble. So water won't make it thin out, and so you got to use some kerosene. Oh, by the way, this will get rid of the tapeworms and everything else in there, which, from my understanding, right, that when you get these internal parasites, they release enzymes, whatever the hell they do, and they slow your bowel down because they don't want to get crapped out. It's easier for them to stick to the wall when your bowels move slower, and eventually they get so slow that your bowels stop working, and they feel around in you, and they feel these hard spots, and they say, well, that's a tumor. I guess you're going to die. And all it is, a hard piece of turd. Right? And so, there you go. Personal experience with, now, let's see. Where are you here? Fecal impaction. A patient of mine just died from fecal impaction. Quite possible a fatal termination might have been prevented by free use of kerosene as suggested. And you may rest assured, doctor, that any procedure recommended by those in charge of clinical medicine been employed many times. right? So this guy is writing about having just read about some dude dying of fecal impaction when he should have been given a. So here we go. Not long ago, the present writer was called into consultation to see a physician supposed to be dying from cancer, either the colon or the liver. Careful palpitation led to the diagnosis of fecal impaction at the hepatic flexure. The physician who had been in charge were skeptic, but this writer himself felt convinced that he was correct. So, after the bowel was washed out with warm soap suds, the patient was placed in a knee-chest position and a pint of kerosene introduced through the rectal tube, followed by a gentle massage of the colon, especially the hepatic area. The patient laying on his right side. Then, after a lapse of 15 minutes, 2 quarts more of soap suds were introduced and brought away a large quantity of hard fecal masses. Still, the main cause did not seem to be affected. Thereupon, the patient was made to drink several ounces of liquid petrolatum or paraffin oil, right? Kerosene. Oh, not kerosene. Right, so liquid petrolatum or paraffin oil. While a second pint of kerosene was introduced, the guy's got it going in both ends. Followed by more soapy water. 15 minutes later, we were in possession of the cancer, a fecal mass of stony hardness with a corkscrew channel through the center. Recovery was rapid. Bear in mind that no harmful amount of kerosene is absorbed within the reasonable time, and you need not hesitate to introduce it under any circumstances. Of course, the kerosene should not be left in the bowel for longer than a half an hour. Such dissolvent action of the oil possessed will be excreted in that time. Right? It dissolves things that can't be dissolved by water. Yeah, were there more? Yeah, I think there were more in here. When a kerosene enema worked. July copy of Clinical Medicine, fecal impaction, where we were told a patient died because doctor attendance. Okay, we just read about that. Okay, you get the idea. You can do your own research on it. I'm not going to read all these things, but there it is. Now, there's also turpentine, though. And so, here's a suggestion which came to us by word of mouth from a doctor who had been using the following method of treating impetigo. Very satisfactory results. He got it from an old country practitioner who found a sure shot in case of this kind of which steady doctor, our friend, was unable to relieve. The remedy is oil of turpentine, nothing more. It is swabbed on with cotton, the application being repeated 2 or 3 times a day according to the indications. Our doctor friend says it cured after failures with X-ray, white pepsicillin ointment, Iccathol, and many other common remedies. I don't know what this is, what impetigo is, but they cured it with turpentine. IPETIGO. Let me go look that up. Hang on a second. Okay, well, there you have it. What's impetigo? It's a common, highly contagious skin infection that mainly affects infants and children. Impetigo usually appears as red sores on the face, especially around the child's nose and mouth, and on hands and feet. Its sores burst and develop honey-colored crust. So, turpentine, take care of it for you. All right, I had one more thing I wanted to read here. Give turpentine more due. So, healing with turpentine. You can download this online, right? Just Healing with Turpentine, compiled by Dirk Gillabel in 2017, Gillabel. And I'm not going to read it all, but natural turpentine comes from pine trees made up primarily of 2 volatile terpenes, alpha and beta. Natural turpentine as a solvent has been used in the past for thinning of oil-based paints. Hey, it dissolves fats. Go figure. Mineral turpentine, also called white spirit, mineral spirits, or petroleum spirits, is a petroleum-derived clear liquid used as a common organic solvent in painting. It is a mixture of aliphatic compounds, C7, C12, non-aromatic carbon molecules, hydrocarbon molecules. Right? They got either 7 to 12 carbon chain hydrocarbons. Yeah, that's what it comes from. That right there, pine tree. Oh my God, I told my family I was taking turpentine. They, of course, like everybody, look at you crazy. Turpentine? That's paint thinner. No, it's oil from a pine tree that thins paint. This is how they harvest it. Really, it's no different than maple syrup. Except with maple syrup, you boil something off and they let that escape, and then they keep what's left, right? The thickened sap. But in this case, you're going to boil off uh, the vapor and then condense it, and that's where the turpentine is. You can buy it online, by the way. They sell it on eBay. Terps in nature. Terps are small molecules that easily absorb into the bloodstream through the nose and lungs and through the intestinal tract. Terps are so small they can easily cross the blood-brain barrier, which means they can absorb by the brain and have a direct effect on the brain. Now, most of these parasites in your body, they travel through your bloodstream and affect all different parts of your body. So this is good news. And apparently turpentine is like the number one thing for Candida. Candida hates turpentine, and it runs from your body. It doesn't even have to kill it. It'll drive it out of your body, according to, if you look online on some of the videos that are on there about people talking about it. But whether or not that's what happens, what it does do is it's a thinner, and it will thin the coating off of the bacteria and the viruses that are causing you to have these illnesses. The uses of turpentine in history. Was a common medicine among seamen during the Age of Discovery, and one of the several products carried aboard Ferdinand Magellan's fleet in his first circumnavigation of the globe. In the 16th century, surgeons put the oils on wounds. In 1536, during the siege of Turin, a surgeon ran out of oil. He resorted to a mixture of egg whites, rose oil, and turpentine. Turpentine isn't considered to be effective in expelling worms from the intestines. As an article from the Belfast Monthly Magazine in 1811 demonstrates, some doctor was consulted by a gentleman 35 years of age and kind of uneasiness in the abdomen with dyspepsia, which were supposed to originate from toenail or tapeworm. A small portion of it had occasionally been evacuated downwards. The doctor prescribed a course of male fern with occasional something or other, as recommended in some non-fleet the plane. In this plan, the gentleman preserved space of 3 months, and period he discharged 2 different times, about 8 yards of the tapeworm. What's that? Tonea? In April 1810, he again applied to the doctor, a consequence laboring under his former complaints, adding that he imagined that the long use of the plant recommended his pains in particular had increased. Right? So by using that plant, he felt worse. The doctor then ordered something or other in a dose of 9 something or other. A few hours after taking the dose, so what did he have here? Oleum turbacum rectificare. I think this is actually the turpentine, using a long name now, in a dose of 9 drachms by weight, and after it a little honey to remove the heat and unpleasant taste it might occasion. In a week after taking the oil, the patient informed the doctor that a few hours after taking this dose, more than 4 yards of the tapeworm were discharged. At the second motion, another quantity of matter resembling the substance of skins of the tapeworm. The medicine produced little or no pain, and at least much less than the plant stuff he had taken from the male fern. Subsequent motions contained no tapeworms. He experienced no pain or heat in the urinary passage, though the urine continued to impart the scent of turpentine for 3 to 4 days. Right? So I don't know how much this is, but he took turpentine. So much by weight, whatever it said, drachms? 9 drachms by weight, in a dose of 9 drachms by weight, whatever that is. Goes on and on and on, talks about all these things it was used for. Right? So, windpipe and lungs, right? Pertaining to the lungs. So basically it'd be used just like kerosene for things to do with the lung diseases. Retards stopping bleeding, resolves gallstones, increases production of urine, suppressed muscle spasms, anti-rheumatic, vermifuge, expelling of intestinal worms, antidote to phosphorus, particularly when old. The essence preserves the oxidation of phosphorus, destroys parasites, painkiller, counter-irritant, antiseptic. To heal by inducing the formation of cicatrix, which is new tissue that forms over a wound and later contracts it to a scar. Internal use: chronic and fetid bronchitis, pulmonary tuberculosis, urinary and renal kidney infections, cystis, infection of the urinary tract, inflammation of the urethra, thick whitish yellow vaginal discharge. Sounds like a yeast infection, right? Cleaning up everything. It's just a matter of using something that will dissolve the waxy coatings that the bacteria and the viruses have, which is the reason they can exist in your system anyways, because they're not being flushed out by water. Dropsy, gallstones, rheumatism, flatulence, migraine, intestinal parasites, chronic constipation, epilepsy, accidental consumption of phosphorus, rheumatism, gout, wounds and sores, gangrenous wounds, scabies, lice, bed bugs. I saw someplace it's a cure for bed bugs. Goes on and on and on. Good stuff. And all it is it's the essential oil of a pine tree. And so, you don't have to just use cannabis oil. Get it for a pine tree. Okay, well, I guess that's all I wanted to say today. I'll get back to my other things about what my videos have been on, which now is trying to file a general liability claim against the government entity, although they're really not the government, they're just pretending to be. But that's the great thing. If you were, if you haven't watched my videos, if you read the what general liability insurance is for, it has things in there like for false arrest, malicious prosecution, imprisonment, slander, libel, unlawful, when they throw you out of your house, what do they call it? Eviction, right? Improper eviction, unlawful eviction, things like that. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out how you file a claim against their liability insurance, and my last 3 videos had been on that subject, and I have some new information to share in my next one. So I'm going to leave it at that. You all have a great day, and don't be afraid of a little kerosene for your lungs or your keister. Putting some turpentine in your tummy, or kerosene in your tummy, because basically these are the same things. It's a hydrocarbon with 6 to 13 molecule hydrocarbon. And, it thins the gelatin coating that coats the bacteria or the virus, and they just get washed away. So you're not treating it, you're going to dissolve it, right? You're not curing it, no, I'm going to dissolve it. I'm just going to dissolve it. That's all this is. A matter of dissolving something that water can't dissolve. Therefore, your body can't do it on its own. Okay, you have a great day now. We'll see you. Bye-bye.